Welcome to Deconstructing Conventional, a show about how we build health, what makes us want to, and how to overcome anything. If you feel like you've tried everything, this show is for you.
It's all about looking for wrong turns in our thinking and exploring the integration of our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health.
We are a freedom-loving, God-fearing husband and wife team, and we are excited to bring you thought-provoking and relatable conversations to help you see your health and your world in a more hopeful way.
Our guests are entrepreneurs, innovators, and critical thinkers who, in search for better answers, bravely question the status quo. Let's get this episode started.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I am super excited to bring you this conversation with Stefan Verstappen today. Probably more than anyone I know, he is ultra prepared for or done the work to help people get prepared for any sort of survivalist type of situation. But what I love about what he does is it brings a historical lens, several thousand years worth of history to this cultural moment we find ourselves in. And so as a relatively brief introduction, he's got such an amazing bio. I want to go over just some of who you have in front of you. So Stefan is a Canadian author, researcher, and adventurer. He's been a survivalist for over 50 years. For 35 years, he's been a martial arts instructor, including 5 years in China. He's written 8 books, including The Art of Urban Survival, which is a 300-page tome on surviving in an urban setting. He's written dozens of articles for various newspapers and magazines, including Historical Cycles, Are We Doomed to Repeat the Past? He has over 280 survivalist books on his website, chinastrategies.com. He has worked as a wilderness guide and a community organizer. He created the course, The Complete Guide to Forming Communities, which I have taken, and it is excellent. He also has a popular YouTube channel with over 200 videos, including the video Defense Against the Psychopath. And he's currently making videos showing the mutual aid community that he is a part of in Canada. So, Stefan, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
It's my pleasure, Krishna. Thank you for inviting me on.
You're very welcome. So I guess more than anyone I've looked at, I've studied a lot of survivalist people of late, and there seems to be no shortage of ideas of how to get ready for shortages and outages. But what I love about what you've done is you look at historical cycles of cultural rebirths and revolutions, and you've not only studied it academically, but you've traveled both East and the West. So it's one thing to study it and make an academic exercise. It's another thing to have just a lived experience of being in a part of a lot of different communities. So before I get into some of the particulars of what you've learned, I'd love to hear just a bit about your story. So tell me more about what drove you to become such an adventurer and a student of history.
Well, I think the key ingredient is curiosity. I've asked myself this question many times, like, well, what is the difference? How
Hmm.
come I'm doing this and a lot of people don't, and what's the
Hmm.
difference? Uh, it's curiosity. Ever since I was a small child, I wanted to know everything.
Hmm.
You
That
know,
sounds like my kids.
yeah, no, because, and that's what children are too, which, don't get me on a rant about the educational system. By the time people graduate high school, they should already have 2 degrees.
Hmm.
We're so dumbed down, but children have their minds, and I have some grandchildren, and I love them to death. And you can see their minds are a sponge. They
Right.
want to learn everything, and I wanted to learn everything. Now, for some reason, my curiosity was not suppressed by public school, and so that's how uh, that's what led me down the path of life that I have followed. I wanted to know. There was the question we are asked as kids, right? Little Johnny, what do you want to be when you grow up? Do you want to be
Hmm.
a fireman? Do you want to be a scientist? Do you want to be an astronaut? Do you want to be a policeman? My answer was always yes, all of those.
Why do I have to pick one?
Why
Right.
do I have to pick one? I want to do all of that. And so my curiosity basically led me in the direction where and it led me through a path, and I've sort of just the Buddhists have a parable about a leaf. No, that's Gurdjieff. Gurdjieff had that. You're a leaf in the stream, and you're just floating down the stream in a certain path. But sometimes something happens, and you go off into another stream. Well, that's sort of been my life. I've just been following my curiosity, following life, but every once in a while something would happen and I would go down a completely different path,
Hmm.
something I couldn't have predicted or imagined, and then I'd follow that path for a couple of years, and then suddenly I would be into another stream. So that's basically explains why I am, or I call myself now, because people say, well, what do you do? Well, you got 10 hours.
Right. No, that would take me at least that long to interview all the topics you're knowledgeable about. Right.
Exactly. Like, I mean, so, they want to put you in a box. Oh, I'm an accountant. Oh, I'm a clerk at the county office. They want to put you in a box, and there you go. Okay, I am this. Well, I could never do that, because, well, I could say I'm a writer, and I am a writer. I'm a registered writer and part of the Canadian Council for the Arts, um, as a literary artist and a
Hmm.
visual artist. Um, but I do a whole lot of other things. I hardly make a living at writing. Writers don't make a lot of money. So, well, I could say I'm an artist. Well, same thing. Canadian Council for the Arts. I'm registered as a professional visual artist. I've done hundreds and hundreds of artworks, but
Hmm.
that's not really how I make my living either.
Hmm.
It comes in handy once in a while. Well, I'm a martial arts instructor. I've been teaching for 30 years. But if I say I'm any one of those things, then, so now I just describe myself. And I know this sounds perhaps a bit arrogant, but I would say I'm a Renaissance man.
Hmm.
But a Renaissance man, through my curiosity and wandering all these different paths, what I have inadvertently and by accident created for myself was a classical education.
Hmm.
Now, people don't know what a classical education is, but a classical education meant you studied science, you studied mathematics, you studied drawing, you studied art, you studied philosophy, you studied history, you studied medicine, you
Hmm.
studied a martial arts. You either became a fencer or a sword master, or a handgun expert. And this was the classical education. You were completely well rounded. You took courses in all the arts and all the sciences. And so inadvertently, I've recreated that kind of an education. So I call myself a Renaissance man, but I think really that's what we all should be and what we all can be. I
Hmm.
mean, instead of boxing yourself into one little category, which is, again, all of this benefits the big state, just label, box, and number and categorize us all into little niches so that they can control us. But by being a Renaissance man, by studying all these different, knowledge modules, now you also bring into that creativity,
Hmm.
because I can do and I can come up with an idea for a public art project, for example, but
Hmm.
because of my knowledge of electronics, I can put something, I can combine the electronics with the art and come up with something never seen before, completely unique. Same thing with philosophy, because of my knowledge with philosophy,
Hmm.
and then the study of history, and then apply it to society, we can come up with parallel societies and communities and separate communities and independent villages within villages. So it's the combination of science and technology and art and history and
Hmm.
philosophy. This is where we blend them together to create new solutions.
Right.
There's
Well, one of
Go ahead.
I guess I would say, I appreciate the classical education model. That's what my kids are currently homeschooling in. It's such a better way to, I think, grow up. I'm envious of the education they're getting, but I'd love to know what in your all your studies and travels, what was it that compelled you to start to put together this impressive library that you have? You got over 280 survivalist books you've been through or helped people market. So what were there like academic experiences of just learning about it, or was there something more personal that kind of rattled you and woke you up to some of the what we're going through culturally, or how did you get to be such a survivalist?
Well, I think it was reading on the beach when I was in, grade
Hmm.
6. My generation grew up under Damocles' sword. We had all this fear porn instilled on us, right?
Hmm.
Nuclear Armageddon, right? When my family first bought a home back in 1963, in those days, um, builders would give you a couple of options. Would you like
Hmm.
a garage? Would you like a patio? Would you like a backyard fallout shelter?
Wow. Yeah, talk
Those are
about
the
putting
options.
fear in you, right?
Yeah, no, you could buy your house and they would build a fallout shelter in under your backyard and you'd have access through the basement.
Wow.
So we grew up with this, and then the movies and the books and the cartoons that, nuclear Armageddon was just around the corner.
Uh-huh.
So I thought,
Okay.
geez, this is going to happen in my lifetime. Now I'm talking back 1963, you know,
Yeah.
1968. We had the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Hmm.
We had the JFK assassination. And I thought, well, this is coming my way. I better get ready. And that's initially how it started for me. I'm becoming a survivalist.
Hmm.
I took the Outward Bound program. It was a 3-year program starting when I was 12 years old. And
Wow.
they taught you wilderness survival, how to shoot a firearm, how to rappel down a cliff, how to canoe, how to camp, how to build shelters, how to bake a cherry pie in a pit oven. It was a
Wow.
fantastic program. By the time I was 15, I was already soloing in the woods, going on week-long canoe trips into the deep bush by myself,
What?
and
Wow.
just to overcome my fear, right?
Hmm.
My fear of being alone in the forest.
That sounds like some of the adventure books my kids have been reading about kids who've just gone out and done the most amazing things because they had to. And sure enough, we have it in us to do that sort of thing.
Absolutely. But listen, I brag, oh, I was 15 when I'm canoeing into the woods. The founding fathers in the United States, they were doing that when they were 13, when
Yeah.
they were 12. They were commanding ships when they were 12. They were surveying the countryside when they were 13, alone, hundreds of miles away from any kind of civilization.
Hmm.
So but in our weakened, softened type of society we live in now, then suddenly I'm, a little bit more rugged than average. But you know what? This was normal for people for thousands of years
Yeah.
before government education and government efforts to weaken everyone, make them dependent on the government. So that's how it started. And I bought my first gun, survival rifle, when as soon as I turned 18, I was allowed to purchase
Hmm.
a gun. So I've been a firearms owner for over 40 years.
Wow. Right
And
on.
but I always tell people that the Outward Bound program
Hmm.
was what changed my life. You see, I was raised by a single mother. My father left when I was quite young. So I never had any male
Hmm.
role models in my life. I didn't have a grandfather. I didn't have uncles. I didn't have brothers. I didn't have a father.
Wow.
And so that kind of made me want to figure out what does it mean to be a man.
Yeah.
I didn't have any examples. And public school, there were no male teachers. There was
Mm.
one. He
Mm.
taught grade 6.
Uh-huh.
For 6 years, I'm hoping, oh, when I get to grade 6, hopefully I'll get Mr. McRoy's class, because he's the only man in the whole school.
Wow.
Of course, I didn't get his class. I got another woman teacher. you know
Man, it shows how much all of us need a father figure and a mother figure, but just when one of those is absent, it's like a hole in our development, it sounds like.
It is. It is. Well, you know the statistics on children raised without father, the
Yeah.
increase in being incarcerated or addicted
Hmm.
or having all kinds of problems if you don't have a father. And I didn't have a father or any
Yeah.
other masculine role model anywhere, not school, not my social life.
Wow. No wonder you did so well in Outward Bound, or we're so pulled to that.
Well, and then Outward Bound came along, and holy shit, I was doing things.
Mm-hmm.
You wake up at 5 o'clock, you go for a 10-mile run, then you crack the ice on the lake and go for a swim, and then
Wow.
go have breakfast, and then you learn rappelling, and then you learn archery, and then I mean, this was
Whew. That'll wake you up and
they don't
throw
run
you up.
those
Yeah.
programs anymore.
Wow.
I've
That's
looked.
too
There's a
bad.
few rare scattered here and there, um, but that really made me tough in a certain sense.
Yeah.
So that's when I began. Well, even before that, I joined the Outward Bound program because I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to be a survivalist. And in those days, a survivalist meant you had to learn wilderness survival because the idea was World War III, nuclear Armageddon, everybody run to the woods.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you better know how to hunt and fish and all that stuff for
Exactly,
sure.
exactly. So
Well,
that's but I always encourage people, when you're raising kids, expose them to as much nature as possible.
mm-hmm.
Teach them how to camp and build fires and how to hike and canoe and build shelters. So because that made all the
Right.
difference in the world for me. So it took me from a really pudgy, you still there, Christian?
Yeah, I'm still here. Sorry, my
It
camera
took
had
me from
hiccuped.
a little pudgy boy, little
Mm-hmm.
fat boy. I look like Pugsley from the Adams Family, the old series.
Wow. And you definitely are not that anymore.
No, I'm not that anymore, but that was a long path. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why I always encourage outdoor education, like what they do in Germany with the
Mm-hmm.
forest schools. You've heard
Yeah.
of that? The
Yeah,
home,
I have.
yeah. You know, we we need to disengage young people from the smartphone and the computer games and all that,
Yeah.
and get them
Nature
out.
is so healing.
It is so healing, and
Right.
my I always tell people, like, if you want to build a soul, you have to be out in nature.
Yeah.
I can do 2 hours on just what being in nature does to develop the intellect and develop the human soul. But we don't won't go to that now. But anyways,
Right. Okay. Well, one of the things I've appreciated about studying your work, and I've spent a lot of time with it, there's a breadth and there's a realism to what you bring to this kind of historical or cultural moment we find ourselves in. And you have definitely a sobering view of where we're headed with the government's kind of descending into their collectivist, communist, dystopian cycle. But you work very hard to not leave us without hope or direction. So, for people who are new to your work, let's just first start. Tell us a little bit about your perspective on kind of the historical precipice we're at and where you think we're headed. And then we'll get into some of the more of the solutions and hopeful stuff.
sure. Well, this goes all the way back to 1986. I'm living in Taiwan, and now there's no TV in Taiwan. Well, there is TV, but it's Chinese, so I'm
Okay.
not watching TV. So you got a lot of free time on your hand, and it was hard to get a hold of English books.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime I got a hold of an English book, I would read it, or an English language book, I should say.
Uh-huh.
And I came across a book that I never would have read in my normal everyday life, and that was called "The Coming Collapse of the 1980s."
Hmm.
It was written by an Indian philosopher, Ravi Pantar, I believe his name is, but I'm probably getting that wrong. Anyways, he wrote about a theory by another Indian philosopher on historical cycles.
Mm-hmm.
So he's predicting a monetary collapse based on historical cycles.
Mm-hmm.
And well, that really resonated with me. I went through a phase of reading science fiction, and I read The Foundation Trilogy by Isaac Asimov.
Hmm.
And in that trilogy, the premise is that there was a historian that studied history, and he came up with an algorithm whereby he could predict the future of civilization. And then he put his predictions into a computer, and then the story over 3 books takes place over 10,000 years, right? And every 100 years, the computer would turn on and it would spout out what's going to happen next, the prediction. Anyways, so ever since I read that book, I'm thinking, yeah, I'd like to be able to predict the future.
Why not? Yeah. Wouldn't we
Why
all?
not? And so all you need to do is study history, and then it'll kind of come to you. So I studied a lot of history since that time. I read that book again around when I
Mm-hmm.
was 12. And then this book on the coming collapse, and he talks about historical cycles. And so I started to investigate historical cycles. Now, lots of historians have written about it. And so then I wrote an article that was published in Trends Journal. Historical cycles, are we doomed to repeat the past? So basically, what happens is civilizations typically last about 250 years and then they collapse.
Hmm.
They follow a certain progression from the founding to the flowering to the merchandising, and then finally the corruption and greed and the chaos and degeneration. And then everything collapses
Hmm.
and it starts again. A new founder, a new civilization, a new political system, and flowering and so on. So I wrote this article for the Trends Journal. I made a video uh, based on the article, and so I knew what was coming. Right, like it's obvious. This cycle has played itself out over and over and over again for as
Hmm.
far back as written history goes. And basically, you have four stages. The warrior stage, where people explore new countries, they develop uh, um, new sciences, they colonize, they build new cities, and it's a good time to be alive.
Hmm.
It's the age of heroes. Then that evolves into the age of the intellect. So now we've built a society, and then you start to build art galleries and universities, and emphasis starts to go on, getting a good education. And you
Hmm.
can see this same pattern with immigrants, the early immigrants from the 40s and 50s, and even before that,
Hmm.
the first immigrants from Sweden and Poland, and they worked their asses off, right?
Yeah.
And they were heroes. They built this country. They made the roads and the buildings and the bridges and all that. And
Hmm.
what do they want for their children? They want them to go to university.
Mm.
So you enter into the intellectual age.
Yeah.
Then from the intellectual age, you enter into a merchant age. Now things are still pretty good. Now we have Henry Ford inventing the production line and manufacturing, and people are making money. And again, it's a pretty good time
Hmm.
because if you have an education and you work hard like your daddy did,
Hmm.
then you start your own business and you make money.
Hmm.
But this all goes to turns to crap after a while because now the greed comes in, now the
Mm.
corruption comes in, and then people that have too much money, well, they want to become degenerate because they've run out of thrills. So they turn more and more degenerate. They become perverts, and um, so that continues for a while. But a society cannot survive being run by perverts and degenerates.
Hmm.
Look at the Democrat Party, and so they can't they can't run the machinery of civilization. They can't.
Mm.
And so it all collapses. Civil war, riots, revolution, poverty, depression. Okay, so that's where we're going. It's pretty obvious. We are not in a heroic age. There's not too many heroes in our society. And we're not really in the age where there's too many, where's our manufacturing gone? Right? To China.
China.
So,
Yeah.
we're not in the manufacturing age. And intellectually, look at the universities, what they teach. I mean, they can't define what a woman is,
Right.
so you're going to pay $50,000 a year to learn from these people. So forget about education. They don't know anything about education.
Yeah.
And so what do we do? Well, what do we do? Well, I've been a survivalist, so I got my preps, I got my food, I got my wilderness skills, I got my first aid and medical skills, radios, and a couple of firearms. I'm not a big deal on having 200
Hmm.
firearms and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. I really don't think we're going to be doing running street battles when it all collapses. You need to do a little bit of hunting,
Hmm.
and you maybe need to scare off a couple of people that didn't do any preps and are knocking on your door. But what can we do? Then that's when I went into history again.
Hmm.
What happened after the collapse of Rome?
Hmm.
What happened after the collapse of each of the 36 dynasties in China?
Yeah.
what did people do to survive all that? Well, that's when I came to the same conclusion that you've come to, Christian.
Hmm.
That is, these people survived by forming independent, autonomous, self sufficient communities. Often they were monasteries. Now, I'm not a big fan of monasteries. I think that's kind of a, it sounds terribly boring to me. But the monasteries that formed in the 5th century AD were the ones that maintained the books.
Yeah, they
They kept
preserved history for us, didn't they?
they preserved the history for us. If it wasn't for the monasteries, we would know nothing about Roman history or Greek history or hardly any of that because they were the ones that reproduced the ancient books by hand, recreating them. They were also the only places you could go to get an education. Now, in the medieval ages, the aristocracy, the barons, and dukes, and that would send their children to the monastery, not because they were devoutly Christian by any means, but because that was the only place they would be taught to read and write.
Mm.
Nobody else was doing that. And the monasteries were also completely self sufficient. They grew their own gardens. They made their own wine. They made their own cheese. They ran farmers markets every weekend, and they traded wool and lumber, and so they were like mini societies that had all the functions of a functioning society with education and medicine. It was the monasteries that trained the doctors and medicinal herbs and things like that. So I thought,
Hmm.
well, that's a pretty good idea, except I don't want to be a monastic order. Can we do that without taking away the celibacy and the and
Right,
the, and the 5 o'clock in the morning prayers?
right. So
Well,
what
yes,
that
of course we can do that.
so that
And yeah,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Well, I was gonna say that kind of led you to what you found it's a better model of the mutual aid societies. Is that right?
Hmm.
Yeah. That's something I came across recently that it just blew my mind how I hadn't even heard of the term before. And then to find out how robust and developed that history was and how it's largely been legislated and erased from history so that we don't even know about it. And I've talked to, several people who I respect as thinkers or, aware of history and the cycles, and they haven't even heard of the term. Or when I mention
What
it,
term?
the mutual aid societies.
No kidding.
Right. I'll mention it, and it seems like, and I don't know if this is your experience as well, but I'll mention the term, or I'll talk about what I've learned, and I get one of two responses. One is either they think bohemian hippie commune, or
Mm.
they think communism, and there's just kind of this vacuum of understanding. It wasn't either of those, and it was groups of people coming together and just really, to your point, building infrastructure and building the foundation of civil society again. And so I guess I'd love keep going with what you were talking about in monasteries, but help me understand or unpack this concept of mutual aid society for people who are just not familiar with how that works.
Okay, so I went through that too. So the monasteries, like it shows you what can be done, but it's not what I want to do. Right? I don't
Okay.
want to live with a bunch of guys. I believe in family. I want women folk around,
Right.
and I enjoy seeing kids playing in the fields. So, but the concept is sound. The only problem with the monastery is it is like a commune.
Hmm.
And I don't like communes. Communes do not work. So yeah, a lot of people think, oh, it's like a hippie commune. Well, um, some in a way it is, but a mutual aid society is not a hippie commune. A hippie commune, everybody lives together, and then after 2 years, they're so tired of bickering over who does the dishes that everything falls apart.
Right.
So a mutual aid society was, there's other models like what the Amish did. That's a good model.
Hmm.
You see, the Amish all live in their own houses.
Hmm.
They don't all share one farm. They live in their houses, they live in their farms, and coming up, when they turn the lights out forever, the Amish will not be affected at all. It's just
Yeah.
going to be another day for them. They don't need the electricity, they don't need the computers, they don't need the government, they don't need anybody other than themselves. But what they do is they congregate in a certain area, a certain geographical location.
Hmm.
Now, where I live, there's a lot of Amish around here.
Hmm.
I see them in their horse-drawn carriages going down the side roads, and I love to see that. I love to see that, right?
Yeah.
And but they cooperate with each other, and this is the idea of a mutual aid society. You live autonomously. You have
Hmm.
your own house, you have your own place to live. You're responsible for your own dinner and your own washing your own dishes. So there's no argument about who's cooking dinner, except maybe with you and your wife. But
Right.
but what gives them strength is they work closely with one another. They trade with each other. They help each other. Look how long it takes the Amish to raise a barn. One day. They all come out. Here's 80 guys. Boom, bang. They got the barn up in one day.
Wow.
That's how they do it. They don't have to. Anyways, I don't want to go into all the details of what you have to go through with the government to do anything. They do it themselves.
Hmm.
So that is a another example of what we can do, right?
Hmm.
And I like that example. And then, of course, they have all their events together, their potluck dinners and their Christmas parties, and they all share it with 80, 100, 200 people.
Hmm.
But when you have 80 people cooperating with each other, um, and they did everything. They grow their own food, they raise their own cattle and pigs and chickens, and they have micro businesses where they would, make straw hats, and the women would sew, smocks, and they would, sell jellies and jams and
Hmm.
medicinal herbs and extracts, and so they were manufacturing and agricultural, and they're cooperating, and they have their own mini economy that is outside and separate from the rest of the world. So I like that idea because if we're going to survive what's coming, we got to disengage from Big Brother. Now, another thing I came across, another version of mutual aid societies, was what our great grandparents did. You see, before the socialist programs were introduced in the 30s and 40s, which is, unemployment insurance and welfare and food
Hmm.
stamps. And here in Canada, we have um, public health, Medicare.
Hmm.
Before all of that, what did the people do? How
Right.
did they get, how did they get medical help? How did they, what happened to them if they lost their job?
Right.
Or they became sick and they couldn't work anymore? Where would they get welfare? Well, in those days, they did it for themselves. So they started these fraternal organizations,
Hmm.
and they had lots of weird names like the Odd Fellows and the Seven Knights of Pythias and the Moose Lodge and the Elk Lodge and the Beaver Lodge.
Right.
They had all these mutual aid societies, and excuse me, what they would do is for the cost of one day's wages a year, that was their membership dues, right?
Hmm.
And with that money, these associations were able to provide all the medical care for the member, all the medical needs. They would provide emergency funds in case of unemployment or illness, right? So basically, welfare and unemployment mixed into one.
Hmm.
They would pay you for it.
Yeah.
They also provided their own educational system, and they even funded scholarships for their members' children to go to university. This is back when university was worth something. And
Right.
so they did all of this for themselves. And it was so successful
Hmm.
that, they started off with, and I want to talk about the medical aspect in a second, but they started off with, um, being able to provide medical benefits and unemployment and welfare and even, funeral costs and things like that. But they became so wealthy because, this money accumulates exponentially. It's unbelievable how much, if you have, 300 people paying in $100 a year, how far that money goes when it's spent locally. You see, we pay taxes, and then 98 cents of every dollar is siphoned away through corruption and insider deals. And
Right, which unfortunately is not an exaggeration.
no, it's not an exaggeration.
Right.
You tell, oh, we're going to fight poverty. Yeah, right. How well is that working? Government cannot do anything positive. Never, ever, ever.
Well, it doesn't produce anything. That's the challenge. It only takes because you're the takers and makers, and government only takes because it's not in the business of making anything.
It doesn't do anything. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So I want to talk about medical care for just a
Hmm.
minute, because
Okay.
we see now how horrific the medical system is in your country, my country, England.
Yeah.
Um, I would not go to a hospital if you paid me. We've already had
Become a
several men.
prison.
No, the hospitals are there to kill you now.
Yeah,
It's
unfortunately.
ridiculous. And what I like to make an analogy with is the ancient Chinese system of medicine. Now, in ancient China, you paid your doctor every month, whether you got sick or not. But if you got sick, you stopped paying him because he failed. So you paid your doctor to keep you healthy. So if you got sick, the doctor loses money. So therefore, the incentive for physicians in ancient China is to make
Hmm.
sure you're healthy.
Right.
Now take the modern system. Can we cure cancer? Of course we can. Is it
Right.
profitable? No money in that. No, there's money in keeping people sick and dying and prescribing drugs and
Hmm.
chemotherapy and surgeries. Now you're talking money. So the incentive of the modern medical system, the monetary incentive, is to keep you sick.
Hmm.
So what kind of a doctor you want to go to? Do you want to go to a doctor who he makes money so long as you stay healthy?
Hmm.
Or the other doctor, he makes money so long as you're sick? And that's what we have in our modern medical system. Now, the old mutual aid societies, they ran it similar to what the ancient Chinese did. They would hire a doctor for just the community.
Hmm.
His only job was to look after the community. So if you got sick, the doctor would come to your house.
Hmm.
Else, you know,
Right.
people nowadays don't understand that or can't conceive of it, but there was such a thing as house calls.
Yeah.
I remember when I was very young, I had an ear infection, and the doctor came to my house, came into my bedroom, examined me while I was sleeping or laying on my bed.
Hmm.
That's long gone, but that's how it worked under the mutual aid societies.
Hmm.
And now the doctor gets paid the same money every month, right? Whether he sees 5 patients or he sees 50 patients, it's the same amount of money.
Hmm.
Now, the incentive for the doctor is make sure you're healthy, gives him more free time to go play golf.
Yeah.
He's getting
Well,
the
and it's
same money.
dependable income too. It's a different model.
It's a different model. It's a dependable income.
Yeah.
And so that's how the medical care was provided by the mutual aid societies.
Hmm.
Now, what happened was the Rockefellers took over the AM. Well, they founded the AMA, American Medical Association, and they took over the medical system, and they were the ones behind all the pharmaceuticals and
Yeah. Well, and the
pharmacy.
Flexner report that basically shackled anything that wasn't pharmaceutical, basically petroleum-based scientific drugs.
Yeah, they labeled them as quacks,
Hmm.
and so we got to what's called the allopathic
Yep. Which means
medical system.
other suffering.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. We have the allopathic medical system that we have in place today. This was instituted by a bunch of billionaire psychopaths as a way to make even more money. Now, what stood in their way were the mutual aid societies.
Right.
So what they did is they found all these mutual aid societies, and they found out what doctors were working for them, and they threatened the doctors, we're going to pull your medical license if you continue working for the Elks Lodge. That's what they did.
Mhm.
And then, along with a bunch of government regulations and so on, they destroyed the homeopathic or naturopathic medicine that these doctors practiced.
Mhm.
They want to keep you healthy. What keeps you healthy? Good food, good medicine, good natural medicines.
Mhm.
So that's what they were prescribing. They weren't prescribing poisonous chemotherapy and let's cut his tits off and like it's
Right. Right.
so they had to go after the doctors and the mutual aid societies. And that's eventually what brought an end. That and the Great Depression in the 30s put an end to most of the mutual aid societies.
Yeah.
And in its place, we now have, public healthcare systems and welfare and food stamps and everything that's destroying our society.
Yeah. Well, and so what that leaves us with in many ways is just the recognition of that model, but also the opportunity to say, well, shoot, our best offense is to create better models. It's to create ones that kind of dissolve them into irrelevance. It's to show people they don't need that. And that's what I love about what you're doing up there in Canada. You've got your own community up there. And so I'd really love to understand kind of how you got started. My understanding is you've got about 40 people right now. Is that right?
Yeah, it's more than that now. We're probably up to 80.
Outstanding. So tell me, like, how did you get that going? I don't imagine you were walking around town with a sandwich board saying, join my end of the world group. Like, how did you start having these conversations? Like how do you begin it? And how do you find your people and get organized the way you have?
Well, I have to tell you, there's an advantage to being in a small town
Yeah.
because more people know each other.
Hmm.
And this all started with the COVID epidemic.
Yeah. That
See,
has
there
woken
was
up a lot of people, myself
yeah,
included.
yeah. So there was a lot of people here in town that weren't getting the vaccine, absolutely refused.
Hmm.
Weren't wearing the mask, absolutely refused.
Hmm.
And a lot of them were Christians and went to churches,
Hmm.
and a lot of the pastors said you have to wear the mask.
Hmm.
So they dropped out of the church.
Ugh.
Yeah. So now they started talking amongst each other, and then also, you had the grocery stores and well, everything. You couldn't
Hmm.
walk into the grocery store without a mask, and they said to themselves, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And so they started to work together first, and they came from numerous different churches,
Hmm.
and to separate themselves and to work together so that they don't have to get the vaccine.
Hmm.
And they started meetings, and there was one guy, an ex OPP, which is Ontario Provincial Police,
Hmm.
and he started organizing them. And again, it was a little bit easier because they knew each other from church
Uh-huh.
to start with, and also in a small town, everybody knows each other.
Yeah.
I've been in this town only 6 months,
Oh, wow.
and every time, and I bicycle into town. My transportation is a bicycle. I don't
Nice.
even I don't even have a car, but I don't need a car because 10 minutes away I'm downtown, and there's every shop and restaurant and whatever you want there.
And you stay in shape that way.
And it forces me to stay active, Christian. Yeah,
Nice.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I wanted to buy a motorcycle, and then I thought, well, I would drive that motorcycle all day long,
Mhm.
and then I won't get any exercise. So I better keep the bike, save the money.
Yeah.
But I bicycle into town every day. And every day I meet six people that wave and say hello and how are you doing? And they know me. And,
Uh-huh.
this was, I've never had that living in a city. Never.
Mm.
I lived in Toronto for 15 years. I could
Mhm.
go out on the street. Nobody would say hello to me. Nobody
Wow.
recognized me. Nobody would wave and smile.
Yeah.
Here after 6 months, everybody waves and smiles. They recognize me. I'm sort of kind of distinct with the beard and the long blonde hair, but
Uh-huh.
they recognize the old guy there with the beard on the bicycle. But everybody knows me.
Uh-huh.
So that's why I tell people that, if you're going to survive what's coming, I hate to say this, but you're better off getting out of the big city. I know how
Yeah.
difficult that is, right?
Mhm. Yeah, it's hard advice to hear, but it's nobody has a good argument against it at this point.
It's hard advice to hear. I know.
Yeah. We'll be right back. But first, have recent events left you feeling anxious, overwhelmed, or disconnected? If so, you may want to check out our program, The Sovereignty Project. It's all about helping you disentangle from the control grid, build community, and lead a flourishing life. To find out more about any of our coaching programs, visit us at True Whole Human, that's true, WHOLE human.com. Now, back to the show.
And I've been helping people that know me, that I've spoken to. I've been getting them set up in small towns all through the United States.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I know somebody here in North Carolina. I know somebody there in Oregon. I know somebody there. Go to them. Just
Mm-hmm.
pack everything up and move there. They'll help you find an apartment. They'll help you find a job.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm trying to do is take the best of all those formats we've seen before, the best of a monastery, except let's not live together, because then you're a commune, and
Right.
a commune is a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that it sounds a lot like communism is because the communists took that as a model to sell themselves. They had no intention of actually being a autonomous,
Uh-huh.
self-sufficient society, but because it had worked, because again, we're going back to the turn of the century, there were things like town and village communes where
Mm-hmm.
the farmland is held in joint ownership of all the members of the town.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't one guy owned everything. The population of the town owned all the surrounding farmland, and
Uh-huh.
they worked the surrounding farmland, and they created their own industries and businesses. So the town owned everything and ran everything for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a successful model. But of course, again, the government went after them like crazy and destroyed all that.
Hmm.
But still, people had this fond memory of, we all own the means of production.
Ah,
Right.
yeah.
Because it worked in that model. Okay.
Because we know how to come together. Yeah.
Exactly. So people had fond memories of what an Amish community was like, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which again was, all the Amish own all the means of production.
Hmm.
So when the communists started up, they tried to, they're trying to find a nice way to sell their bullshit. And they said, oh, remember how everybody used to share and get along and all? That's what we're trying to do. Of course, it was a complete lie, because communism is evil incarnate.
Right.
But that's why people mistake mutual aid societies as a communist type of thing, because the communists tried to dress up in that, wolf in sheep's clothing.
Yeah.
That's what they tried to do. But that's not how it really works at all. All it is that people with like interests work together on all levels, work together financially, work together to grow the gardens, work together to educate their children, work together to supply medical care. So we can do the same thing now.
Mm-hmm.
We can still go back and hire our own doctors,
Right.
but we would have to form a PMA.
Is that like a nonprofit here in the U.S.?
Public mutual agreement.
Okay.
So what you do is you form this entity.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody pays a monthly fee, and it could be anything, $1,
Mm-hmm.
$50. You decide amongst yourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can hire doctors, and those doctors can treat you, and they are not subject to the American Medical Association regulations,
Hmm.
because they are now working, private member association, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
They are now working for a private club. And so they're not in the public domain. We have a lot of alternative medicine doctors, and they are not allowed to practice in the public domain because the AMA will come after them. But if you work for a private club, that's
Mm-hmm.
what it is. That means you are not in the public domain.
Hmm.
They describe it as, if I were to invite you over to my house and I give you a massage or
Uh-huh.
shiatsu or acupressure,
Mm-hmm.
the government has no business what I do in my house,
Okay.
right? So a PMA, a private members association, is the same thing. You have a private club, only members can come there. And when they come there, they're outside of the public domain, and therefore not subject to the regulations. So mutual aid societies and these autonomous communities that we're trying to form,
Mhm.
and this is, we discussed this at the last meeting of the medical team.
Mhm.
I've got a really great medical team here. We've got a really great medical team here. Lots of natural cures, natural treatments,
Mhm.
holistic approach. All, they grow the medicinal herbs in their backyard, and then they
Nice.
make their own medicines from that. So it's not, tainted with pesticides and packaged and adulterated by pharmaceutical companies. It's all
Yeah.
natural stuff. And there are miracle stories, fourth stage prostate cancer. And then
Wow.
they took this tea and this as
Nice.
extract. A month later, they're completely clear. Their
Wow.
doctors are bewildered. What happened?
Right.
You know,
Wow.
well, we did it ourselves.
Yeah.
So that if I want to get someone like a Chinese acupuncturist,
Mhm.
but if I went to his office, he's got to follow all the regulations and all the billing and all the charges and all
Mhm.
the taxes. If I say to him, we got one guy here, Dave, come on over, I'll pay you $150.
Mhm.
No taxes, no income tax, no filing forms, no insurance claims, nothing. I'll pay you $150. Cure me. He can do that only if I'm a private member association.
Ah, okay, so is that kind of what you guys have set up there? Like, how were you someone who plugged into an existing network, or
I,
did you get it started?
I plugged into it,
Okay,
but they had only been going for a month before I plugged into it.
okay. They had probably no idea the gold mine that was you showing up to be
I
part of
don't
that.
I don't know if they still know what a gold mine, because I didn't go in there and like, oh, listen to me, I'm the
I'm
expert.
the hero, right? Yeah.
I don't do that kind of stuff. They were running they had all the right ideas. It's like they took my course. I'm going, where did
Ah,
you learn that?
right.
Take my course because it was along the same lines. Everything, including my recommendation to form teams. So we have
Mhm.
communications team, medical team,
Mhm.
housing team, and nutrition, agricultural, gardening,
Mhm.
chickens, rabbits,
Wow.
and food co-ops. So they are. I don't know if they did it instinctively or somebody in the group, read my material. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Doesn't matter. The important thing is that we form these communities
Mhm.
and as many as possible, because then we can unite too.
Right. Well,
We
you're
have
saving money on food. You're saving money on medicine. You actually know your neighbor. You can get eggs, like whatever it is that you need. It's amazing what how people can lower their expenses and increase their friend circles and the enrichment of life just by intentionality behind doing this. Is that pretty much what you guys have found?
yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's even more than that too. Like, so we do all that. We got the medical team, and the last meeting we were looking into, because I know a couple of the members, like when the society collapse,
Hmm.
we're not going to have hospitals.
Right. You're gonna need an option for taking care of your health outside of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things we discussed is, and most of the people here either live on a farm or were raised on a farm.
Hmm.
And so you get those kind of farm accidents, mostly with chainsaws.
Oh no.
And so where do we go then? So we're planning ahead.
Hmm.
If there is a serious accident, how will our medical team respond? So first of all, we set up a radio communication network, because if there's no cell phone, how are you going to call the medical team for help? We're doing a couple of things simultaneously. One is the communication team.
Hmm.
We've got 30, 40 ham radios spread out over 3 counties.
Wow.
Yeah. Our demographic, our geographic map includes like 6 small towns.
Oh, geez. That's great.
Yeah. But still, nobody's further apart than, say, 20 miles.
Yeah, you can all ride a bike anytime you if you actually needed to, you could all be together and come up with a plan.
Exactly. And so, we designate each small town to have like a master medical kit.
Mhm.
One of the members there will keep it. So if there's an emergency, we go to the nearest small town, go to
Mhm.
our member who is storing on behalf of the community this
Mhm.
giant medical kit, and But we're also looking into starting our own walk-in clinic. We could fund it,
Yeah.
grants and donations and fundraising and um, charging a monthly fee, hire our own doctors. But again, we have to make it a PMA.
Right. But what I love about it is every little bit of sovereignty that you set up is one more way that the government can say, hey, you have to eat our bugs. Hey, you have to use our this technology. You'd be like, no, thanks. We're good. We've already figured that out. We don't even, it doesn't register as something you'd even need to do
Yeah,
because you've set up a different way to exist without their structure, I guess you'd say.
yeah. Well, we're looking ahead, because we already talked about, historical cycles.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, this is all going to collapse, and there won't be ambulances, there won't be medevacs, there won't be hospitals. There might still be a couple of small doctors' offices. I don't know,
Right. Well, but
but
if you're prepared for a worst case and that the devolving into whatever the end of this cycle is, it's you're at least you have a way to survive and thrive through it, and that's
yeah,
what's brilliant about it. So
yeah.
tell me how did you the community was already existing. So what tell me to walk me through the conversation of how you introduced yourself and how you got plugged in and made suggestions and I want to make
Well,
it as practical for people as I can.
I didn't introduce myself. I have a close friend who was part of the community from the beginning,
Mhm.
and I'd known her for like 2, 3 years.
Okay.
Remarkable woman and great family. I know her.
Mhm.
Her
Mhm.
husband is a martial arts instructor. They have 4 kids. She homeschools. She, does everything with gardening,
Mhm.
permaculture, chickens and bunnies, and you name it. She's and medicinal herbs. She does all this stuff herself, right?
Mhm.
So a great person to have on your team, on your
Sure.
community,
Yeah.
right? And well, we got along really great. I've sort of become their adopted grandfather because,
Nice.
like I said, I don't have family,
Uh-huh.
and their parents, the kids' grandparents, actually, you know how it is with families. They don't really have much to do with their grandkids, and I love her
Mm.
kids. They're so cute. It brightens my day to go over there and show them a
Sure.
magic trick, and I
Mhm.
always bring a little chocolate, and the dogs always get a hot dog, and they all get excited. And she said, "Oh, you've got to join our community here." I said, "Okay." So she brought me to a meeting, and I introduced myself, and that was it.
Oh, that was easy.
Yeah, that was easy. But listen, she had established trust with the other members because
Right.
she was already very active in the community. Through her permaculture, like she would give out saplings and cuttings and seeds
Mhm.
to people that wanted to grow this stuff in their own backyard. And
Mhm.
so there was always people coming over to her house, and she'd be giving them the seeds and the saplings and working with people in the community already. All right.
Mhm.
And that's another thing that people say, well, I can't find people, I can't do anything. I said, well, did you volunteer at the soup kitchen?
Right. Have you served anywhere?
Have you served anybody anything?
Right.
Um, I tell people about my cookie strategy where you just bake your own cookies, and every time you go to the farmer's market and buy something, you give the vendor a little bag, 2, 3 cookies in there, and say,
Yeah.
thank you for providing this product. Here's some cookies. Now, if shit hits the fan and all the grocery stores are closed and the farmer market's closed and you need to buy some milk,
Mhm.
can you go over to that farmer's place and say, remember me? I'm the cookie guy.
Yeah.
They will remember you. But you see, you got to set a precedent.
Yeah.
You have to give first. I'm all
Right.
in favor of giving for it. I'm
Yeah.
going to volunteer my time. I'm going to volunteer to donate some money. I'm going to volunteer to bake some cookies for the bake sale, fundraiser. If you don't do that,
Yeah.
then you're not establishing any kind of a community. Now, oh, things are getting tough. I need some friends. You know what? People aren't buying it.
Right. Yeah.
Where
You
we're,
don't
yeah,
miss your window. Like it's such a simple platitude to have a friend, you have to be one, but it's so powerful as well. If you're not proactively doing this, you're not intentional about trying to find a place where you contribute and belong, you're not going to have it when you need it.
exactly. That was a good way to say it too, Christian. Yeah.
Thank you.
Um, So, but I've always been like this. I always give.
Mhm.
I always volunteer. I teach Tai Chi for free. I give young guys lessons in how to canoe and build a fire. And I've been
Nice.
doing that my whole life. Um, so for me to fit in, for people to trust me, well, listen, they know me.
Mhm.
If they know me, they know that I already give. I
Mhm.
volunteer. I'm here for
Mhm.
you. I help people all the time.
Mhm.
I'm always trying to do something. So what are you doing to benefit society? What do you do?
Mhm.
Like, do you spend 1 hour a week? And I tell people, look, at least 1 hour a week. Do something, coach kids soccer, or hold a first aid seminar, or
Mhm.
teach young girls how to bake, or what are you doing to make this a better world? And if you're not doing anything, and then you're thinking, oh, well, I got to be part of a community now because shit hits the fan. Well, listen, you think people don't know that?
Yeah.
And I've spoken to communities, that are trying to form communities all over the country, and that is one of the biggest complaints. Like the freedom cells and things like that.
Mhm.
I've talked to people that, sometimes they work, but most of the time they don't. And I said, so, because I also want to know what destroys these communities. What is it
Yeah.
that you do that's going to cause your community to fail?
Mhm.
And the most common complaint I had from these people is, well, there's all these people that are now getting worried. They're woke now. They're awake now, right?
Mhm. Not woke.
Not woke. They're awake now, and they know we're, and now they're coming and wanting to be a part of the community. But you can tell right away what they really want is for us to look after them.
Mhm.
Yeah. So people will see through you. If you're, oh my God, we're at the end of the world. I better find somebody. Look, what have you done up to now?
Yeah.
And if you want to be part of a community, you better get busy doing something
Yeah.
for others first.
Yeah. You gotta
To
become known, but to put deposits in relational equity accounts so there's something to withdraw later if you need it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm the same way. Listen, I help a lot of people anytime I can. Everybody that emails me or comments on my YouTube channel or something, and they
Mhm.
need help, I will write them back. I will
Yeah.
talk to them. I'll do what I can. I'll refer them to communities that I know of that are in their general area and so on. I do what I can, but excuse me, I do know that a lot of them are like, I'm scared. I need somebody to help me,
Mhm.
somebody to save me. And yeah,
Yeah.
look, okay, yeah, we all do.
Yeah.
But
But
you got to give first.
yeah, where are you part of the solution rather than the
Yeah.
list of needs, right?
Yeah, I have
Well,
one guy, he wants to talk to me, he wants to talk to me, he wants to talk to me. I've already spoken to him many times, but I know what
mhm.
it is.
Hmm.
He wants me to make him feel better. Okay.
Hmm.
But really, like, what have you done? You know,
Yeah, until there's action backing it up, that's
but yeah, okay,
right.
I'll help you. But what have you done, by the way,
Yeah.
the last 20 years to make this a better world?
Yeah.
And the answer is nothing. So, but I'm supposed to devote my time and resources to help you now? Why?
Right.
Why would I do that? What's in
Yeah.
it for me? I'm willing to help people that help themselves, right?
Right. Good for you. Well, so one of the thing another topic that I wanted to talk to you about, because you talk about it a lot in your course, and it's really the importance of being able to create a sense of belonging and how we need something more than just charters and bylaws to hold us together. So tell us a little bit about what you've learned about the importance of rituals and ceremonies and just fun and play, kind of as the social glue that holds communities together. Why are those things so important?
Well, they're innate to our species.
Hmm.
We are a social animal. We're a herd,
Hmm.
although we can also be a wolf pack. Kind of
Hmm.
in between there. We're both a herd and a wolf pack. But the importance of belonging to a community is inherent in our species. Not only that, it is the key to long life.
Hmm.
My friend, he's a doctor in Santa Barbara. He's an emergency room doctor. He wrote a book called The Passion for Life. He was investigating why some communities tend to live longer than others.
Hmm.
Another doctor wrote a book on it called Blue Zones. And there are areas across the globe where everybody in the village lives to be 110,
Hmm.
right? So, well, how come they all live to be 110 and the rest of us die in the 80s when we're
Mm-hmm.
80? So they investigated. Could it be the water? Could it be the soil? Could it be the diet? Could it be the air? Could it be the wine they drink? And listen, healthy food, fresh air, and clean water, yeah, it helps.
Mm-hmm.
But the one common denominator between all these communities was they felt they had a belonging to each other.
Mm-hmm.
They had people that they were friends with for 100 years. they,
Right.
they met every other day for lunch at the restaurant, the local restaurant, had lunch together and talked about life and what was going on in the village. And there's been dozens of studies done since then.
Mm-hmm.
If you take an old person and you isolate them in a senior's home,
Uh-huh.
they don't have family, they don't have friends, and they're just sitting there in their bedroom watching TV, that's the quickest way to kill them.
Yeah. Really is.
And but if you get them out and they go out every day to for lunch with the same people, the same friends, and they know each other, they help each other out, just belonging to other people will make you live longer, will keep you healthy. So that's part of it. If we get separated from our community, we tend to die more quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to be part of a community. Now, look what the government is doing, dividing us on every single issue. Oh my God. I don't know a single family outside of the community
Mm-hmm.
that gets along. Oh, they
Yeah.
don't agree on politics. They don't agree on the jab. They don't agree on the trannies. They don't agree on, oh, for Christ's sakes. And
Right.
for that, they split apart the family.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not talking to my brother anymore. Oh, yeah. Okay, look, how's that working out for you? So, but of course, this is done on a purpose because the government knows that by dividing us, they're killing us.
Yeah. That's
Not
part of why
only
they locked us in our homes with COVID and said stay apart
that's
from each
why they
other.
did that. Yes, Christian,
Yeah.
that was part
Plus
of it.
it gives the businesses, the big businesses, all the revenue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how many people committed suicide during those periods?
Oh
Right.
man.
Well,
Yeah. No, it's sad. But what I think the point at least that stood out to me is how powerfully having something to look forward to gives us that reason to keep going and gives us a reason to contribute. And that's really what it sounds like you were saying about the blue zones and the other places that have, amongst all the other factors, it's the fact that they needed each other and there was something coming that was worth showing up for. There was the next ceremony, the next lunch date, the whatever that held them together. Is that a decent summary of what I heard?
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
So that's so first of all, we need to do this. It's vital to our existence, number one.
Hmm.
So how do you build those bonds? You build it through shared values, number one.
Hmm.
Now, most of the people in my community that grew up and raised in farms around Amish people and they're Christians.
Yeah.
Now, I confess I'm not a Christian. I don't follow any religion. I'm not a Buddhist or anything or an atheist. Let me put it this way: Jesus and I would get along just fine.
Good to
But they
hear.
have that in common, okay?
Uh-huh.
They have that in common.
Hmm.
And also they have family in common. Here, people have 4, 5, 6 kids, right?
Yeah.
So they have that in common. And then we also do things, but looking after each other and combining social events. So over the past summer, we had several social events. And one was, first of all, tending the garden. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So we had 3 giant gardens spread out over the different counties, and people volunteered to tend the gardens.
Uh-huh.
So, then people would show up every Saturday, Sunday, and they'd till the soil and they weed and they plant the seeds and water it and harvest it and all that. So they all work together for that. So that is a bonding experience, right?
Mhm.
You're out there working in the dirt, and by the way, getting your hands dirty is healthy.
Yes.
It
Don't be afraid of
improves your
germs.
yeah, improves your resistance to your immunity system. Get
Mhm.
dirty out in the
Yeah, yep,
woods.
yep.
Then we had a picnic where some of the members could play musical instruments, and we set up a little bandstand there, and they played music, and everybody brought their kids, and the kids all got to know each other and play. So the children's social life now became part of the community.
Mhm.
And it was wonderful to see that free food and barbecue and all that. So that was one thing.
Mhm.
Then there was just the other day they had capture the flag game.
Nice.
So everybody that had children, teenagers, bring them over to Vivian's farm. We're going to play capture the flag for 4 hours. And again, the kids got together. They played with each other, the parents, the barbecue, looking after each other. One of our members, she had a miscarriage and wasn't feeling too good for after the miscarriage. So the community at the meeting said, "Who can bring her a dinner? We want somebody to bring her a meal every day for a week until she gets
Mm.
better, because we don't want her walking around and she's stubborn. She's not going to lay in bed like she should. So she'll be up and cooking her own dinner." So we divided it out. 7 of us volunteered.
Mm-hmm.
On what day? I went on Monday and cooked the dinner, put it in the Tupperware container, drove over to her place and gave it to her.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. You know what? You feel good doing that
Right.
if you're not a psychopath. If you're a normal, healthy human being and you're able to help somebody, that's good. There was another couple, they were senior, they got really sick.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. We all volunteered to bring them a dinner once a day for a week, right? So we did that. And then we had a potluck dinner
Mm-hmm.
and a corn roast. And we made stone soup and brought all the kids. So it's, again, this kind of follows the Amish model,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what we want to do is take the best of all these different models, the best of the mutual aid society, the best of what the Amish did, the best of what the monasteries provided, and we combine them into our own hybrid kind of community. But a large part of it is sharing community activities,
Mm-hmm.
dinners and play and games for the kids, and bring the whole family, the grandparents, the kids. Everybody gets together and shares free food. Like no money was charged for any of this.
Mm.
Everybody donated the dishes. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
donated the corn, and so everybody ate for free and got
Mm-hmm.
to. So this is how you build a community.
Yeah.
There is something primal about sharing food. So you want to build your community, and this is what I tell people: "Look, bake some brownies, okay?
Yeah.
Bring them to the meeting. Everybody will love you. Trust me."
Yeah. I like you better when you have something in your mouth or in your hand that you could eat or drink.
Because
Yeah.
it's primal. Now, listen,
Right.
I'll tell you the dark side of it. It goes back to when I was a player, when I was young. I
Mm-hmm.
knew that if you bought a woman dinner, that whole eating experience is bonding.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it works with people you're not trying to date. And
Right. Well, you mentioned on your website, was it formingcommunities.com, that you found that Christians are the most effective people at thriving or forming thriving communities. So what was it that led you to that conclusion?
well, just from history and examples,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they're just the best at it. Uh, the Hutterites, the Mennonites,
Mm-hmm.
the Amish, they're all religious communities, and they've all formed the most effective. The
Mm-hmm.
Quakers are another group,
Mm-hmm.
the most effective mutual aid societies. They formed them. They
Uh-huh.
even went on for some lasted from the founding during the Civil War to this day.
Mm-hmm.
For example, Oneida, you've probably heard of them, right?
Uh-huh. That's a silverware company?
That's right. It's a
Yeah.
silverware company, but you know how they started out?
I don't.
As a mutual aid society, and
Uh-huh.
they were Christians,
Huh.
and they did exactly like the Amish, and they moved to a location together, but it wasn't a commune. They didn't all live on the same farm, but they lived nearby each other. And
Mm-hmm.
so they did all the stuff. They did the agriculture, and they produced milk and cheese and wine and vegetables and crops, but they also had
Hmm.
numerous um, mini industries. And I like to incorporate mini industries into your community, things that
Mm-hmm.
you, members of the community, and boy, when you get 40 people together and you ask them what skills they have, you're
You got a
blown
lot of
away.
skills. Yeah, I'm
You're
sure.
blown away. This guy is a fabricator. This guy knows welding. This guy knows farming. This guy knows how to fix a motor.
Yeah.
Now you take advantage of the skills these people have and to build your own industries.
Mm-hmm.
So the Oneida Company, the Oneida Mutual Aid Society, which was formed in Oneida, New York,
Mm-hmm.
that's where the name comes from. I think it's a small town or something, a farming town. They did a number of those things. They built furniture, rocking chairs, tables, because they were carpenters. A lot of them were carpenters.
Yeah.
And then the women would, apparently they would weave really good cloths and make blankets that were very and they would sell them. But
Hmm.
one other thing that they did was they made silverware. They had a couple of silversmiths.
Hmm.
And so that's how they started. Now, the Oneida Mutual Aid Society is already long gone. But the silver company that they started
It's
is still
still
around today.
about that. So, is it fair to say because that the mutual aid society or the Christians that you've observed is that it's probably more than just the cross section of business skills. I would imagine it's at least the moral fabric or a shared set of values that gives them some sort of underpinning, a higher authority or something that they agree to that helps undergird and give them a deeper sense of stability than maybe some others you've studied. Is that a fair assessment?
Oh, you're dead on, Christian. Yes,
Okay.
exactly. You see, it's the shared values. Now, a religious system, of course, is shared values.
Mhm.
So a mutual aid society is made up of Christians, Muslims, and Jews would
Mhm.
never work.
They have different, yeah, different
It would never
values.
work, right?
It's depending on where if we just stick with Abraham, maybe. Yeah.
No, it wouldn't even work sticking with Abraham.
Yeah.
Because look, even with Christianity, how many different
Different
churches
denominations,
and
right?
denominations? I mean, hundreds, right?
Yeah.
So, but I know that the members here are from different denominations,
Uh-huh.
but what they do have in common is they're Christian. So
Gotcha.
that helps a lot. All right.
Yeah. Yep.
Um,
Okay.
Another good example was the Buddhist communities in China and Japan.
Mhm.
Same thing. And also, it has to be homogenous. Diversity does not work in a mutual aid society.
Hmm.
That's not to say that different diverse communities can't form their own. For example, after the Civil War, the newly freed blacks
Mhm.
formed into dozens of mutual aid societies, and they helped them to establish businesses and buy homes. Because when you got 100 people
Mhm.
and you're a black man and you want to start a barber shop, let's say,
Mhm.
those 100 people are going to tell all their friends. So now you got a
Mm.
thousand people.
Yeah, go to your barbershop.
Go to your barber shop, right?
Yeah.
They're all going to go to your barber shop. And so now your barber shop becomes successful. It's really a shame that when they destroyed the mutual aid societies, of course, they destroyed the black ones too,
Yeah.
which had been providing so many benefits to the blacks because they were dirt poor, just released from slavery.
Mhm.
And because of the
Yeah.
mutual aid societies, they were able to quickly become, upwardly mobile,
Yeah.
starting their own businesses because you have people to help you. You have
Right.
people to help you,
Yeah. Well, so
and yeah.
well, as I want to start to, I want to have you wrap up with just kind of your top two or three lessons in terms of things that make that societies thrive and things that the mistakes that they make. But um, one other thing I found interesting about your course was just how you pointed out that mutual aid societies essentially have been hijacked by the people that are the psychopaths who are essentially forcing tyranny on us these days, and they've basically come up with their own secretive or nefarious societies,
Right.
and they're attempting to force their view of the world on us. So, give me just so people can appreciate how powerful people coming together around shared values is, and give me a couple examples of current, in let's say not so friendly societies that have organized and are behind some of what we're witnessing.
Well, like I said, I've been speaking to people and all over the country and even in Europe.
Hmm.
There's communities functioning in Spain that I'm in contact with, and in Germany and Switzerland and Holland and United Kingdom,
Hmm.
Ireland. I'm in contact with all these. I've spoken with them.
Hmm.
They've emailed me. They said, "Oh, I heard you, and I want to talk to you about our community." And
Hmm.
again, I offer the advice for free.
Uh-huh.
And I donate a lot of my time to helping people.
Yes, you
That's
do.
why I feel I belong to a community.
Hmm.
And so, the common dysfunction of these communities is you get a psychopath in there.
Mm.
There's a lot of wannabe cult leaders
Mm.
that think they can form a cult and call it a mutual aid society. And then they're going to be the great guru, and they're going to, tell everybody what to do. There was some guy that says, I got 300 acres, and everybody can come and live on the farm. So a lot of people went there, and they found
Mhm.
out that they were expected to be basically slaves for this guy. I mean, he
Oh,
controlled every
man.
aspect of their. It was like Jim Jones,
Hmm.
told them when they could wake up and what they had to do and get out in the fields and start plowing. And that's not the way it works. You don't need a cult leader. But of course, these people are psychopaths. So
Mhm.
it's very important to select only the best people. Now, the community I'm in now, it's only by word of mouth. So you have to be vetted by somebody who's already a member, who's already been vetted based on their participation in the community, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So after 6 months, I pretty much have the trust of the community. I teach first aid for the medical teams, not only in this community, but in a neighboring community
Mhm.
25 miles away. There's another one just like us. And we share a lot of things like the picnics and the
Mhm.
mutual events and the potluck dinners. And we come to each other's events and we cooperate. And, this is in anticipation of setting up cross county trade and barter once everything goes down, right?
Yeah.
So if we don't have it in my community, the next community, hey, you guys got any cheese? Yeah. Okay, we got extra tomatoes. We'll do a deal.
Uh-huh.
This is how it's going to have to happen after everything goes to hell. So that way people get to know you
Mhm.
and they get to trust you. And now that because my friend that introduced me, everybody loved her. I love her. I love her whole family, and I'm happy to be their grandparent.
Mhm.
Um, but she had established her reputation already. She had already helped a lot of people in a lot of different ways, and people trusted her. So when she said, "This is my friend Stefan," that's all it took.
Yeah.
That's all
And
it
that
took.
that was the guarding against somebody coming in with an agenda or turning it into something that it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I tell people is start with two other people, okay? You and two other people. You agree, we're going to work together. We're going to try and do this. We're going to try and do that. Now, if you know of anybody that is, and one of the prerequisites for our community is
Mhm.
you cannot be vaxxed.
Ah, yeah, that weeds out a lot. That could be a heck of a burden on a society as those injuries start showing up.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
also, we've had numerous cases reported from our members that did not get the vax
Mhm.
of going to social events with people that did,
Mhm.
and then afterwards being sick as a dog for 3 4 days.
Yeah, I've heard
So
that
we
too.
are concerned about the shedding.
Mhm.
So, but it weeds out two things, okay? It weeds out everybody that buys into the political propaganda.
Yeah.
You can't work with them.
No, it's really hard. Yeah,
You
because
can't work with those people. If they believe everything they see on TV and everything the government tells them, forget about it. They're not going to be productive members of any community.
yeah.
So the first filter then is if you fell for the propaganda and you went along with it, sorry, we can't risk you being in our community.
Hmm.
But they don't want to join our community anyways.
Yeah, they probably don't see the need for it.
They don't see the need for it.
Yeah.
So that's one filter. The other filter is to be introduced by somebody that you already know.
Hmm.
So that way, that's known you for a long time.
Yeah.
Psychopaths can fool you. They can fool you for weeks, months,
Mhm.
maybe even a year until you finally get enough clues to go, wait a minute, this guy has
Yeah.
something wrong with him. I
Yep.
don't think I can trust him. Then you don't introduce him to your community, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
and then although I recommend having a charter, we don't have one.
Okay. You
Uh,
expect at some point you will have one?
right now, we don't need it.
Yeah.
We work really well together. I do recommend Robert's Rules of Conduct. We had a bit of a flare up at the neighboring community.
Mhm.
Some of the members held a grudge against some of the other members and then they walked out.
Mm.
So, but the thing is, with Robert's Rules of etiquette, is you do need to establish certain rules
Mhm.
during meetings. There is no yelling. There's no swearing.
Yeah.
There's no straw man arguments. Um, there's no calling anybody names. You can't do that. And if you have a problem with somebody in your community, you have to bring it up in front of the community and talk about it.
Yeah.
You can't be like form a little clique and then go, oh, you know that Dave guy? I don't like him. You know, he's too bossy and he thinks he knows too much. And blah, blah, blah.
Well,
Listen,
that's yeah, that's where having moral underpinnings or a set of bylaws or rules of engagement can be so helpful in diffusing that sort of thing, I imagine.
yeah, but because that will tear down in a community, and that's what's torn down a lot of the communities, especially the communes. That's why the communes never worked because
Yeah.
they all formed factions, they all
Yeah.
formed cliques, and then they all pitted one clique against the other clique. And now you've destroyed yourself from the inside out. Look, we are together to help each other against the outside world,
Yeah.
not to make enemies amongst each other and start bickering and fighting. And so the way you avoid that is if you've got a problem, you speak up about it,
Mhm.
and everybody can bring their feedback in on it.
Yeah.
So you say, "Oh, Dave is too bossy," and I feel like I have to obey him and all that. And you bring that up, and everybody says, "Well, Dave, yeah, you can be a little bit bossy at times. You can pull it back a bit, and if you feel
Yeah.
that you're being, objectified or oppressed, and that, bring it up at the next meeting, and we'll have another talk with Dave. At least that way it gets solved. But if you don't bring it out into the open and talk about it, and then be reasonable about it, it's not like, oh, Dave is bossy, and then everybody says, yeah, let's string him up.
Yeah. Well, there's something about having your behavior mirrored back to you by other people who, as far as you can tell, at least have your best intent or your believe the best about you, and they're giving you an opportunity to see how you come across, and that can go a long way into helping us check our own behavior or soften our approach to things. So I can appreciate
Yeah,
the model
yeah.
of using meetings and
And again, the important thing is you got to stick together. And
yeah.
if you have like, and let's face it, these are trifling issues. Do I
Hmm.
care if Dave is bossy? I don't care because I'm a stoic and I'm not married to my opinions. So if
Hmm.
somebody has an opinion, well, I think we should do it this way. Well, um, if you think it'll work and everybody else goes along with it, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Even though I might have a better solution in my mind and all, well, am I going to get all upset about it? Am I going to start being confrontational? Oh, it's got to go my way. My ideas are better. Look, everybody has too many goddamn opinions. Can you shut up and cooperate? Can you just, get along with people? But, nowadays, and again, this is part of the government programming, right? Oh,
Yeah.
your voices must be heard. No, really, no. A lot of people's voices don't need to be heard. I don't care to hear your voice. Let me know what you can do. Can you cook? Can you grow a garden? Well, then I'll listen to you. But otherwise, just some people, Karens and assholes, spouting their opinions. I don't care.
Yeah.
And you can't insult me because again, I follow it like a stoic's path, the way of the warrior.
Hmm.
I'm sure you've heard some of my talks on that.
Hmm.
What is the importance? The importance is family,
Hmm.
community, working together. The importance is not my opinion and not me getting all the attention and not me being, the big know-it-all that tells everybody what to do. That's not important because that's not going to save anybody.
Yeah. It's learning how to come together, and you've done such a job of mapping out for us. So I would encourage anybody listening to this to go check out Stefan's course or his books or his YouTube channel. There is a no shortage of wisdom and particulars about how you can figure out your way into and thriving within a community, whether you call it mutual aid or whatever you call it. But so last question I want to ask you, Stefan. So what would be your best antidote for fear of what we're up against and what's coming?
Well, the best antidote is that the future is bright.
Mm, I
Again,
like it.
according to the theory of historical cycles, after the collapse comes a new warrior, golden, heroic age. So if you believe in the theory of historical cycles, which predicts we're going to collapse, okay, but that same theory says that once the collapse is over, there's a new age,
So much to look forward to. Yeah.
so much to look forward to. So my advice to people is, look, you have to be prepared, okay?
Hmm.
You need food and water and medicine stored up in your house. You might need one or two firearms. Um, you need to get as many skills as you can, figure out a way to heat your home and source water and things like that. You need to prep enough so that you can survive.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the best ways to survive is you are personally self-reliant and prepped. I'm good for a year.
Mm-hmm.
Food, water, medicine, I'm good for a year. I don't need anything or anybody for a year. But if I can join with a community, I can now last 5 years.
Nice.
No problem. We look after each other.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have enough food for everybody for 5 years. If you can survive 5 years, then what will happen after that is our communities
Yeah.
will join together and
Yeah.
form a new society. That's where it comes from. That's because like Gert just mentioned the Sarmoon Brotherhood, which was a monastery, and they took the analogy of the bee, and
Mm.
the bee went around collecting honey and storing it. So that's what our communities kind of are. We collect the knowledge, we collect the people, we collect the skills and the equipment that we need to be self-sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
Then after that, we cooperate with each other. We will form the new town council, the new um, the new society,
Mm-hmm.
and it will be people like us in small communities. And already, like I said, we have our community, but we have a sister community 25 miles away.
Yeah.
And we're looking at establishing a couple other sister communities so that we cover more than just our county, but maybe two counties, maybe part of the whole province. We'll all be scattered with independent communities that know of each other, that have a common purpose, that cooperate with each other. And then once the government and the banks and they've done all their dirty business, they're going anyways,
Yeah.
Christian.
No,
Like
they are.
all
They
these
have to.
they have to, all these megalomaniac dreams of running the world. Come on, Jesus, Murphy. That doesn't work. It never
Right.
works.
No, hubris.
Absolutely. And pride goes before it falls. So listen, they're going to do a lot of damage before they go down.
Mm-hmm.
It's up to us to survive the damage they do. But once they're gone, it's up to us to rebuild a new society. And if it's people like us, it will be a wonderful society.
Yeah. Well said. It's fun to think we might be able to actually move into a better life than what we've ever known, and
Yeah,
we
we
didn't
will.
even know that's what we always wanted.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
We will. We will move
Cool.
into a better life. And
Yeah.
so that's what we're working for, folks. Swallow your pride, put in a little extra effort. Remember, the goal is a better life. And most importantly, see, I'm 65, so,
Mm-hmm.
I've had a good life.
Yeah, you have. Well,
But
Stefan, thank you so much for your time today. I'm honored that you spent this much time, just downloaded a fragment of what you have in your head. You've probably forgotten more about survival and history than most of us will ever learn. So I appreciate that opportunity. And I definitely want to encourage people to check out your work and your books and videos. And so give people a little idea of where to find you or what you're up to next.
well, thank you, Christian. You're too kind. Um, China Strategies, that's one word.com. It has nothing to do with China. My first book was on Chinese military strategy. I got the website 25 years ago. I never changed it. I just put everything on that same website.
Cool.
So everything's on that website. Don't worry, I don't work for the CCP. And the other website is formingcommunities.com, and that's specifically on forming communities.
Right on. And what's your YouTube channel?
Stefan Verstappen.
There you go. All right. Very cool. Well, Stefan, thank you again for your time. And I am honored to have spent this time with you. And I hope that listeners find this, I'm sure they'll find this encouraging and insightful for their situation. So I very much appreciate you.
Thank you, Christian. You take care and all the best on your efforts.
Thank you.
If you like that episode and want to hear more, check out our website, truewholehuman.com. We are high-touch personal coaches who help you identify and solve the upstream problems blocking your health. Sign up for our newsletter or come visit us on our free speech-friendly social channel, truewholehuman.social.